Hi guys, Blessing here with another part of the series that we started before, and the series is how to build a Chrome extension from scratch with JavaScript. Before you continue, I'd like you to check out the first video so that you can see how we set up the Chrome extension, because you might not be able to follow up if you didn't start with us. But if you know how to set up Chrome extension and you just want to know how to send message between extension and the browser, then this video would help you a lot. Okay, you need to know JavaScript very well, and you need to know HTML and CSS, because these are the things we'll be using. We'll be using some built-in function provided by Chrome itself. The first thing we are going to do is to set up a script for our extension. This script will live in the assets folder /js/popup.js. Okay, so let us create a folder named assets. You are not obliged to structure your Chrome extension like this. It is not compulsory, but it's just cleaner to have all the same file in a particular folder. And now we are going to move the background.js to the JavaScript folder also, because it is a JavaScript file. Since we are moving the background.js, we will need to update the configuration we have in the manifest.json. The last time background.js was on its own, which means it was in the root folder. So now we need to add assets/js/background.js to update the root. Now what we want to do is that we want to make sure that our extension can be activated and deactivated, and this is the action that will send the message to the Chrome tab. The first thing to do is to listen for the checkbox event. Let's query the selector document.querySelector impute name, then checkbox. Okay, now that we have that set up, then we can add an event listener to it. So the event we are listening for is will be the click event, and we'll have an anonymous function. So we'll pass the parameter there. This parameter will have all the details about the elements that we've clicked on. So in order to get the value of the input box, we'll have it under e.target.value. So e.target.value, rather e.target.checked. So this gives a boolean value. It can be true or false. When it is checked, it is true. When it is unchecked, it is false. Now when the user unchecks the box, we want to set the timer to 0, and when the user checks the box, we want to set the timer to our default value. So if we have e.target.checked, we would have a ternary operator, and this ternary operator would either give a time or be set to 0. So this time now it's a parameter, is a variable. Let us set the variable time now. Now this time now, we can let us just have a default time of 5 minutes. Now this is what we want to do. When the user activates, the timer starts from 5 minutes, but we need to calculate how many seconds is in 5 minutes. And how do we calculate that? That's 5 times 60. And in JavaScript, the timestamp is calculated in microseconds, and that's why we need to do times 1000. So now 5 times 60 times 1000, that's the time, that's the duration of time that we want our user to work on. Then when that time has elapsed, the timer will be 0, and the pop-up to tell the user that it is time to rest will show on whichever tab that the user is on. So let us save this value into something. So we say check time. So now we can get either time now or 0. Okay, so that is looking good. But what we want to do now is that whenever this is set, we want to change this. We want to change the text 0 seconds remaining to whatever seconds is remaining. And if the timer is 0, we would say not activated. So we are listening for the event and we are changing some parameters, some information on the extension. So we're focusing on the extension for now. That's what we're doing. I hope you're following. I hope you understand what we are trying to do. Okay, so let us move forward. So if we check this check time would effect some change on the extension. Let us create a new function. DOM, let us say DOM data. Since we are going to be changing some data on the DOM, we'll pass in a timer, and this is what we say: if the timer is false, or if the timer is equal to 0, all would say is that we would change the text to inactive. We change it to inactive. Document.query selector. What is the status? Okay, status.inner text equal to inactive. So when timer is 0, it will be inactive. Then we want the function to stop there. But if none of those conditions is true, what we'll do is that we'll calculate the remaining time. Remaining time equals to timer minus new date. Now if we want to work with dates in JavaScript, we will have new date dot get time. So we want to get the current time, new date dot get time divided by 1000. So what we did there is that the timer that we've set for the extension minus the current time. So obviously this timer will be in the future and this is the current time. So when we subtract it to give us the remaining time, then we'll divide by 1000 to get the remaining seconds. Then if this is a negative value, if it's a negative value, that's if it is less than 0, let us make it 0. So we'll not be having a negative time on our extension. Okay, now I noticed that I'll be doing document.getSelector a lot. You don't need to do this. So instead, I would like to clean up the code and just have a get function. So what this function would collect is a selector. The parameter will be a selector. Then what we'll do is to just put the document.query selector at once there. Okay, so we'll be returning this. Alright, now so we don't need to say get every time, so we can just change this to get. And change that to get, and then get this. Hope you understand what I'm doing there. Alright, so now get status dot inner text template literal, then we have our remaining seconds remaining. Alright, so whenever we tap the button, the checkbox, we should have some changes occurring. So let us effect the changes here. So if any of this happens, what should we do? We would send the data to DOM data and we'll pass in our check time, because here we have our timer and that is what we want here. So if the timer is passed in, we'll first check if it is 0 or false and we'll put in active. If not, we'll do our calculation. So that is how to check for events. Let us see if it's going to work. Let us just check what we have been doing. Alright, so this is our extension, and when we click it, it says 0 seconds remaining, and inactive. 0 seconds remaining and inactive. Okay, so it's looking good. It's looking good. It's looking good. But one thing I noticed is that our time is not showing there. It's supposed to show. So what we should do is that we are supposed to add the current time plus this to get our future time. So it is like the time now plus 2 hours. So that will give us our future time. That's the calculation we're supposed to do here. So let us do that calculation. Now, how do we get the current time? New date dot get time. New date dot get time. Then we add it with what we have. So that will give us our future time. So instead of saying time now, let's just say future time. Future time. So future time. All right. So future time will be this, and if it is checked, future time will pass to the done data, and if it is not checked, 0 will pass to the done data. Let us check this again and see how it is. So 300 seconds, because we are using 5 minutes. 5 times 60 is 300 seconds. Activate, deactivate. So activate 300 seconds, deactivate, inactive. So that's working the way we planned. So let us move on. So we've been able to listen for the event of change event of the checkbox. The next thing we want to do is that we want to persist the time. So let me show you what I'm talking about. When I click this and I click activate, then if I go out of the extension and I come back, we've lost that data, and when I click it again, we've lost that data. So we want it to persist so that when I come back to that place, we have our data. And also when I activate and I go out of the extension, I want to come back and still find it activated. That is what we want to do now. So the way to do that is that we're going to save those options into our local storage, and Chrome gives us a built-in function for that, and that is chrome.storage.sync. Chrome.storage.sync. Now let's go to our manifest.json. Why? Because we need permission to use the storage, so that we need to add permission. I told you that we're still going from here, so we need to add the storage permission. Let's go back to our popup.js. Okay, now to do that, we need to set whatever time that we've gotten. We need to set it into our storage. So to do that, we can do chrome.storage.sync.set. That is how we set the new. So we can set timer, then checked time. So that's how. Then also we need to set the status. We need to set the status to whatever value is the. So whatever value is the checkbox giving us, that is what the status will be. So when it is false, the status will be false. Okay, good. So when we set this now, we'll be able to persist the options. So also when we open the pop-up, we need to get that data before we run our code. So to do that, we'll wrap all these statements into a get function. Chrome.storage.sync.get. Let us get the timer, then pass that timer as we pass the timer, then we wrap all this into that function. Okay, good. So whenever we click the box, we'll first query the storage to know if a timer has been set, and when the timer has been set, we can use that timer to use the timer, but if it is not set, we'll create a new timer. So now we need to edit this statement. So first, to check for timer, also you use a ternary operator. So if timer and timer is greater than 0, let us use the timer. Else, let us create a new timer. So what this statement is telling us is that if timer is not equal to null or is not equal to false, if timer is a truthy value and timer is greater than 0, timer is not 0, we'll use that timer as our future time. Else, we are going to create a new future time. That is what this statement is telling us. Let us check Chrome and see how far we've gone. Okay, looking at this now, we need to add this also to this function. If not, checked time would throw an error because it obviously does not know any checked time outside of this function. So when you click on the pop-up, we need a particular function that will run as soon as pop-up is active. That's what we need to do. We need to run a particular function as soon as the pop-up is active. And which function should we do? We should query first the storage. Let us query the storage, then we get the data from the storage and implement it on the pop-up. Then later we'll now check for the event of changing the checkbox. So let us first check the timer first. Chrome dot storage dot sync dot get. So as soon as the pop-up comes up, this will be the statement that will first run. All other statements need an action before it can run, but this one will run without any action. So we'll first check the timer, then that's timer. All right. So this is an arrow function in JavaScript. So when you check the timer, immediately you call dump data. So dump data will handle whatever will be on the extension. Then we want to also make sure that our checkbox is checked if the status is true. We want to make sure that our checkbox is checked if the status is true. So let us also get status. So if we are getting more than one value, then this should be in an array. If we are getting more than one value, that should be in an array. Okay, so since we are getting more than one value, we'll add status. It's important for you to know if this is the first, if timer is the first variable, if timer is the first value that you are looking for, timer should be the first in the objective, followed by status and status. So the positioning is very, very important. All right, so if status, we want to set the checkbox. We want to set the checkbox to checked. Include name checkbox. Include the checkbox dot checked. So this is just pure JavaScript because true. Else, that will be the opposite of this. Or we can even turn this into a ternary operator. I love ternary operator. So if status, return true, else return false. So that is even faster. So you can just do this. So ternary operator helps you to reduce repetition of code. So imagine what we did in 3 lines or 4 lines is what we just did in 1 line because of ternary operator. All right, so that is just the statement we want running on our first pop-up. Okay, so let us check how far we've gone. All right, so as soon as I come here, it's active because we set it to true at first. So let me deactivate it and go out. So when I come back, it is deactivated. So when I set it 300 seconds remaining, and let me go out. Normally when I come back, I should get some 200 and something seconds because we are subtracting it from the current time, so it should reduce. Then also the checkbox should be checked, it shouldn't be unchecked, and that is what we have, 281 seconds, and the checkbox is checked. So if I uncheck it now, I should, and we go out, when I come back I should see inactive. So that means our statement is working exactly the way we want it. So the next step we want to do now is to pass that message to the tab that the user has activated the extension. So all the content script on the tab should get that message and start working and start doing the countdown. We will not implement the countdown in this episode, but we will implement it later on. But what we want to just do is to send the message and be sure that the message has been received. Okay, so that is very, very simple, and let's get down to it. So to send a message from your extension to the Chrome tab, like I said before, you need to send it first to the background.js. So in order to do that, let's implement this function, chrome.runtime.sendMessage. I know that this might look very, very hard to grasp, but one thing that helps when you're working with something new, especially when you're working with preview functions like this, is to play around with it. To go to the documentation, developer.chrome.com, you will be able to see how it is used, the parameters that are necessary, the types, and what is expected for each function. So this is how you can understand. Play with it, console log the result or whatever it is returning. This is how you get familiar with this thing. I used DOM data here. Change it. Try to use your own. Instead of checking for timer here first, why not just get this done, then check for timer. So when you're playing around with it, you get familiar with it and you'll be able to understand it better. But if you're just writing exact code that I'm writing, you won't understand how it works. All you just know is how I did it, and that is all. But you need to understand how it works in order to implement things on your own, and that is the essence of us going through how these things work bit by bit. Alright, so chrome.runtime.sendMessage. Now this send message will receive an object as the argument. Then this object, so when you activate or deactivate, we want to send a message. And what message are we sending? So what type of message are we sending? We want to send a message that check status. So we're sending a message to the tab, to the content script that check the status. If the status is true, continue your countdown or start your countdown. Then if the statement is false, reset the timer to 0 and stop the countdown, and remove the pop-up if you have a pop-up on the page. So that's what we want to do. But if there's no pop-up and the status is true, start the countdown, and when the countdown is 0, put the pop-up for the user to see. So that is the type of message you are sending. So you can name this anything. You can name it this your name, and it will work the same way the same way I'm teaching you now. So it's left to you. It's left to you. Okay, so the type is status. So we're passing this as a message. Then the status. What is the status? The status will be this. Okay, then that's all. Alright, so we are passing the type and we are passing the status. That's all. Okay, so now the background would receive the message. So how do you receive message? Remember, when we want to send message, we do chrome.runtime.sendMessage. But when background.js wants to receive message, what does it do? It does chrome.runtime.onMessage. I wish that Chrome developers maybe they had added receive message instead of on message, like chrome.runtime.receive message. That looks like something that is that you can relate with more, but then they chose on message and we have to just use that. So chrome.runtime.onMessage. But when you have this on message, you need a listener. So chrome.runtime.onMessage, it means that this will be running on in the background and you'll be listening for when the popup.js or the content script sent message. So immediately it sends the message, it grabs it. It grabs the request. It grabs the sender and it also grabs send response. That means there is an ID that is attached to the message, so that when it sends response back, it sends it to the real or to the exact app that sent the message. Okay. All right. So we'll not be using the sender because we don't need to validate which sender sent it. We will use the type of message to know the type of send, the person that or the app that sent it. So if request.type, so remember that in our object here we sent a type, so this will be part of the request object. So request.type is equal to, what did we put here? Check status. So the next thing to do is to check if background.js has received the message. So request.status. Remember that we've also passed in status here, so that should also be accessible. So if it received the message, we should be able to see it in the log message. So you need to also send a response back to say that yes, I've received your message, and you will start working on it. All right, so you can just send anything back. It depends on you. So error is false. That's to say that okay, it went through and you have your message. So you can do any one you want. You can the type of message you send back doesn't really matter. So I can just say check status was received. Okay. Alright, so we should see this in. Remember, it is the extension that is sending the message. And if we can see it in the background.js, then we know that it is passed. This check status was received would be received by the pop-up, not the background, because it's the background that is sending back the message. Alright, so that we will not have error, let us just add our send response. Okay, let us just have our return value here. Return true, and let us also have return true here. Bad. So the reason we're having this is that we want to make sure that if we do not have any condition for whatever message that is passed to the listener, we will still pass something so that we will not have a runtime error, and that's why I am writing this here. Okay, so we've been able to pass message to the background.js. Let us check if our message will be received by the Chrome extension and it will also be received by the background.js. So now to get access to the background.js file, you click on background page. So you click on it, background page, and that is what we have here. Okay, so this is the background page, right? So we need the information. We need a true or false log message, because request.status is supposed to be a true or false message. So when I click on this and I click on activate, I should get a message true, right? Very correct. So when I click on deactivate, I should get a message false. Good. So we are getting our message to the background.js. And also let us check the log message for our work time. So when I inspect the page for the pop-up, I should get check status was received. That is a message sent back from the background. So when I click on activate, so let us check the inspect. Let's console.log. Okay, imagine I was supposed to set up a statement that will receive the message on the pop-up side. So yeah, so whenever we send a message, the second parameter will be a function that receives the response. So we have a response. So console.log response.message. Why are we using response.message? Because we want the message part. So we could just do response and to pass in this old object. So let us try again, and hopefully we do not have any issue. So I'm going to refresh, then deactivate. Okay, check status was received. Wow, this is working nice now. Check status was received, and let us check our background. We should have good, false. Let us test it again. All right, let me check background. True, that's nice. Then let me check this, and check status was received twice. Good. So this is working the way we intended. And the last part for this section is sending the message from the background.js to the web page itself. Now this will be the last part, and I'll be seeing you next time. So let us quickly set that up. Sending the message to the content script. Okay, now so if this message comes in, we want to send the message to the content script. So in order to send message to the content script, we need to specify what is it, because when Chrome creates a new tab, there is a specific ID given to that tab, and we need to get that ID and target that ID whenever we want to send a message to it. So how do we target the ID? There is a function that Chrome has given to us, and that is chrome.tabs.query. So when you query, you will pass in some argument. We want to know that the tab we are querying, we want it to be an active tab, and also we want it to be in the current window that the user is in. So when this is set, we'll pass in whatever information we get into a function. Okay, this should be equal to, and we'll pass in that information into a function, an anonymous function. Then we get the first value. So if tabs, so we want to know if the page is as fully loaded. So if tabs first index is true, that means it is available, then we can now send a message, chrome.tabs.send message to the tab ID. Remember, when we wanted to send message from here, what did we do? Chrome.runtime.send message, because we are sending it in the realm of the extension, from extension to background. But now, if we are sending it outside of the extension, that's when we use tabs, chrome.tabs.send message. So we are targeting the ID, that's o.id. So that will be the ID of the tab. Then when we send message, what do we want to pass across? Sorry, this should not be a function, this should be an object. So we want to pass across what type of message are we passing. The type of message we are passing is that check status. All right, check status. So when this message is passed, the content script will check the status, and if it is true, it will start the countdown. If it is false, it will change the value of the timer back to 0, and it will stop counting. So let us create a content script in our JS folder. Content script, you can name this anything you want, but since that is the name of the script itself, so let us name it content script. So because we are adding content script, we need to also add it to the configuration in the manifest.json. We need to add it to the configuration in manifest.json. All right, so we'll add content script. Content scripts, then put it in an array. Okay, this should be a comma. So the first thing we want to do is that what type of URL are we matching? So we have our matches. So do we want a specific URL? We want all the URLs, and this is like the convention. If you want all the URL, this is what you should do. All right, so this is provided by Chrome itself. Sorry about that. Okay, that and that. All right, so you want all the URLs, and so we want it supported for HTTP and HTTPS. Next is JS. So the content script will be living in our JS folder. All right. So that's it. That's it for now. We'll need CSS to style our pop-up, but then that will be later. Then when should the content script be added to the document? When should it be added? Because we want it to be part of the initial paint of the page, we'll put document start. Document start. All right, so we've been able to set up the content script. Now in this content script, would receive the message that the background.js will be sending. And how do we receive message? Like I told you, we'll do chrome.runtime on message. So that's how we receive message. Oh, sorry, add listener. All right. So in the add listener, we have an anonymous function. All right. Just like before, it will grab the request, it will grab the sender, then to grab send response. So we already know how the send response works, right? Now we need to check what the type of messages that we are looking for. So if request.type is equal to check status. What we want to do is that we would send it, we would just log out. Let me check if we sent the status. Oh, we're supposed to send the status with this message. So we'll log request.status. And we'll send a message back telling from.response. Send response. All right, let me just copy this. Let me just copy this. Yeah. All right. So the status should be logged in on the page of that we open, and the background.js should get back check status was received. So let us check this, and if this works, this will be the end of this episode. Then we'll move to adding more functions and more functionalities to the extension in the third module. All right, so let us don't forget to always refresh So now we are looking at the message from the background.js to our test site. So when I click on, okay, let me just reload this test site. When I click on deactivate, let us check our, okay, so let's check our site. So when I come here and click on activate, I'm not getting anything. Okay, let me check. Number 3. Okay, I'm not getting anything, and that's a problem. Status. Oh, okay. I'm supposed to pass in request.status, not just status alone. That's a mistake. Okay, so let us check our extension now and see if it works. Good. So always refresh, then always refresh here. Good. So now when you activate, it gives you a false, and when you check here, you find Chrome status was received. When you activate, you get true, and you come here, you get Chrome status was received twice. So when you activate, or you get an error. Now the reason you are getting this error is because we are targeting a tab that has HTTPS and HTTP, like this one. So if the tab does not have HTTPS and HTTP, definitely it's going to tell you that the receiving end does not exist, because you are sending message to a tab, and if there is no tab that has HTTP and HTTPS, it will not receive the message. Do you understand? So that is why we are getting that error. Now in order to fix that error, then return. Right? So if we don't have any tab loaded, or we cannot really get a particular tab that makes sense, that does not have HTTP or an HTTPS, so what we will do is to return and send our response straight away. Alright, so that is that about sending message from your extension to your background.js, from background.js to your content script, and you can also do that all the way around. So that's that about today. Thank you for staying with me all through and learning. It's really been a fun time. So what I just want you to do is to play around with it, try to change up some things, run into errors, ask questions. I'll be happy to answer your questions in the comment section, and don't forget to smash the like button and share this if you find it very helpful. And the third part, I'll be adding more functionalities, and we'll be showing the pop-up to the user. Thank you. I'll see you next time.